Well, depression is one of the most common mental illnesses in our country. It affects more than 20 million people each year.
Including me. It can be debilitating, but a new treatment may be able to offer quick relief in the form of a nasal spray. Dr. Piacoli joining us now. So talk to us a little bit about, now tell me what it's called, the name of it. It's
Spravato.
Spravato.
Yep.
So it's for depression. The FDA approved it. Is it as effective? Like, for instance, I'll be honest, I take Zoloft. Is it as effective? Is it better? What do you think?
You know, we talk about depression, which is a really, really difficult illness, but 30% of depression is what's called treatment-resistant depression, which means that you have taken 2 or more antidepressants and you're still down in the dumps. You're just not getting out of that hole. So this medication, which works by a whole different mechanism, actually got approved in 2019 for patients who are already taking an antidepressant as sort of a second layer add-on. But more recently, they did a trial and said, well, what about using this by itself? And the results were really, really impressive because, you know, with antidepressants, as you know, Sam, it can take weeks or months to see an effect. With this medication, you can see, you know, euphoria and happy thoughts coming out within 24 hours.
Wow.
Within 24
How do you get your hands
hours.
on this stuff?
Yeah.
No, but seriously, what's up with the nasal spray? That part of it kind of surprised me a bit.
Yeah, so they did that very intentionally. So if you think about it, the fact is you want it to get quickly into the bloodstream. So nasal spray goes directly through the nasal mucosa into our bloodstream. It doesn't get digested by the liver. So you can actually use a smaller dose to achieve the same sort of effects. And again, because it comes on so quickly, you actually want the effects to come on very suddenly. So the nasal spray is a great way to reduce the dose, increase the bioavailability, the amount that gets into your bloodstream, and have the systemic effects come on a little bit sooner.
How are I'm just going based off my own experience, how are the side effects in comparison to a pill? I just remember it took 3 weeks. I remember insomnia. I remember low libido. All of that did eventually go away, but that was something that I had to kind of conquer to get on the other side of depression.
This is a very different drug. So, you know, our usual drugs work on a chemical called serotonin in our brain. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. That's like your Zoloft and what have you. This is a drug that's actually a derivative of ketamine. Now, ketamine has gotten a bad rap because of what happened to Matthew Perry, but we know that it's a hallucinogen and it's an anesthetic, but this is a derivative of ketamine called S-ketamine, works on these receptors in the brain that are involved in our mood regulation. So you'll see immediate effects of this, just like you would with ketamine. You can see dissociations. You feel this like out-of-body experience right away. Some people can get hallucinations. Some people can even have psychosis. And in fact, it can affect your blood pressure suddenly. So when we're talking about this nasal spray, ladies, we're not talking about us sitting at home spraying this into our nostrils ourselves. We're talking about a medical procedure where you go into a clinic, they put it in your nose, and then they monitor you for 2 hours afterwards to make sure you're not having any of these sort of scary, potentially life-threatening side effects.
Yeah, that's not what I was imagining at all. But then you mentioned ketamine, and my first thought goes, is this something that is addictive or habit forming?
Highly. And that's the double-edged sword here. So we have a medication that works within hours, lasts for weeks to give people relief who failed everything else. But then again, you're stacking the deck with people who have a predisposition potentially for psychological dependence, for habit-forming behaviors. They already have a chemical imbalance that makes them more predisposed to habits like addictive behaviors. And then you have a medication that's called psychological dependence. So that's why in the wrong hands, this could be really dangerous, because it does create a euphoria. So you kind of crave it psychologically, and because the effects come on so quickly, people want more and more of it. So we have to be really careful to use it in the right patient, in somebody who's failing everything else, and to use the lowest dose possible. So when you first start on it, you get it several times a week, and then you could space it out to maybe once a month, and potentially even stop it altogether if you get somebody over their specific depression symptoms.
So this isn't a first line of defense. You would have to fail other medications and then be prescribed this, essentially.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Treatment-resistant depression is who this is for now, but that's still 30% of depression.
Wow.
So I'm optimistic that it's going to really change the way we think about depression, get people out of the hump who are failing the serotonin medications, but we have to be really careful with it.
Revelation 18, verse 23 says, "The light of the lamp shall not shine in you anymore, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. Now, this verse speaks of the judgment that is against Babylon. It symbolizes a corrupt world system that has led many people away from God. The imagery of the lamp shall not shine in you anymore, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore. This signifies the complete destruction of this city that was once great. The light in this verse represents hope and life being extinguished. Then the joy and unity that marriage symbolizes are silenced. This reflects the end of Babylon's influence. The reference to merchants as the great men of the earth, this speaks to the city's economic power and wealth. Many people admired and pursued this city, but despite its prosperity, Babylon's success was built on deception and ungodly practices. The term sorcery, now this is translated from the Greek word pharmakia. This means to prepare drugs. The lure of commercial Babylon is like drug addiction. It is fed by deceptive advertising and manipulation. It's a way to control people through deceptive and harmful practices. This could be either spiritual or material ways. Babylon represents a system that seduces people away from the truth with false promises of wealth, power, and pleasure. The verse is the ultimate worthlessness of placing trust in worldly systems. They may seem powerful and prosperous, but in reality they're corrupt and temporary. God's judgment on Babylon is a reminder that no matter how successful or invincible something appears, if it is built on deceit and sin, it will eventually fall. This passage calls us to reject all the seductions of the world and to remain faithful to God. We are to place our trust, but in truth, on God's word, not in momentary material wealth or human power. Let us live with the hope of God's kingdom, which cannot be shaken.